Done. All right. So yeah, we're gonna be going over Dragon Hunter. We'll take a look at the build first, similar to how we did the Scourge session last week. We'll take a look at the traits. We'll take a look at the armor. One thing to know about this build, I guess, first and foremost, is that yeah, there's a greatsword in it. However, I would say for more ranged engagements, say like if we're fighting Roar and we can't just like hard push them immediately, you'll probably get more value out of staff. Now, I mean, Greatsword 2 hits really hard in melee. You get the symbol, you get also the Greatsword 5 pull as well. But I would just have both weapons on hand, make it situational. Kind of read how the fights are going, and you can adjust as needed. If you think you're going to get more value out of Greatsword, go Greatsword. If you think you're going to get more value out of Staff, go Staff. But I'll leave that up to you. The sigils on the Greatsword and the Staff will be the same. I mean, right now we're running Force, Bloodlust on Scepter, Torch, and then Force Impact on the alternative weapons, so your Staff or your Greatsword. We do have Marauders for the armor and the weapons, Berserkers for the trinkets. You could obviously start switching in more Berserker gear as you see fit. Um, we run Marauders initially just for newer players so that they could learn with a little more cushion on their HP. You have 15k base HP versus a lot lower HP pool if you're running full Berserkers. So just make that judgment call yourself. If you notice that you're surviving really well, your positioning is really good, you know how to use your invulns, you know how to do your blocks, all that good stuff, um, feel free to switch in more, you know, damage-focused gear. As far as the utilities go, pretty simple. We have the two traps, so you have Processional Blades and Test of Faith, and then you have Sword of Justice. This isn't updated yet, but you now only have two charges of Sword of Justice in World versus 3, and then you have Shelter for your heal, and then you have Renewed Focus for your elite skill. We'll talk about these more in depth in a little bit, but this is just the loadout that you currently have. The traits, I'll probably only go over like the more important traits. So in this first line of Zeal, so I guess by the way, we run Zeal, Radiance, and then obviously Dragon Hunter. In the first line of Zeal, I think there's a little bit of flexibility here. You know, a lot of guilds will run Zealous Scepter, which is fine. You could probably swap to this if you have a Herald in your party. So just make a note of that. If you have a Herald, put on Zealous Scepter. If you don't have a Herald, you might try to run Wrathful Spirit. You'll basically get Fury and Resolution anytime Aegis pops. So if your Firebrand is doing the job and getting some Aegis out on you, and then you also get Aegis from your F3 passive, I believe. Anytime that pops, you're going to get Fury on yourself and also Resolution. So it's just a way to get Fury on yourself without having a Herald in your party, consistently applying it to you. Um,
Can you pull that up so like can see what you're talking about? Like
Pull
the
what?
specialization. The specialization.
The specialization. I'm not sure
Is,
that I know what you're talking about.
or are you just talking about like just press H and go to
Oh,
Your
your
build.
spec?
Your build.
Yeah.
yeah.
Since you're talking about this, just so people know what you're talking about. Okay.
Oh, do you not see it on my screen right now? Do you not see
I
my
see it
browser?
now, but not what?
Do you not see my
No,
browser?
I see Guild Wars. I see Guild Wars.
Oh, okay. So my recording is recording my um, entire desktop. I guess Discord is only streaming
Just
my game
do.
here.
Yeah, you probably have web
There
caption
you go.
instead of screen.
Oh, I
There we go.
see.
Okay,
Okay.
it's good now.
Wow,
Yeah,
look at
I
that.
was like, okay,
Sorry guys, I'm new here.
we
Cool.
got it.
So like I said, the Zeal line, Wrathful Spirit. If you don't have a Herald in your party, you could run Zealous Scepter. Otherwise, you're gonna get more might while wielding a scepter, basically. And whenever your Virtue Skill 1 passive effect triggers, you gain more might, or you gain might. And then also Zealous Blade, your power is increased, gain additional power when wielding a Greatsword. Your Greatsword skills have reduced recharge. You'll still run this even if you swap Greatsword out for Staff. You're still going to get that base 120 power buff from just having this trait selected, but you also get an extra 120 when having a Greatsword on. And then also your Greatsword skills have reduced recharge, so that, spin to win, Greatsword 2 skill that pumps a lot of damage, you'll get more of it. Obviously, it doesn't apply if you're running Staff, or if the fights dictate running Staff, but you do have this here just for an extra base power increase. Symbols also deal increased strike damage. This is not a trait that you select, but it is just a base 30% increase to strike damage, which is nice. And then also, we run Symbolic Avenger here, which gives you increased damage whenever your symbols hit a foe. So you get up to 5 stacks of this. So anytime that your symbols hit a foe, you're going to get a stack up to 5. And then that's up to a 10% damage increase. So your symbols are going to be your Staff 3, your Scepter 2, and then also your Greatsword 4 if you were running Greatsword. So just keep that in mind. So you want to make sure you're hitting your symbols, and you want to make sure you're getting those symbols down before, I would say, if possible, before getting like your traps down and using your bigger damage skills. Because as you can see, you get 5 stacks of this, you're going to get an extra 10% damage. And then if you are, running Scepter as well, if you're in your Scepter loadout, you're going to be getting more might. So it's just a nice little damage increase there. So the next line that we're running is Radiance. You're going to be running right hand strength in the first line right here. And that's important because you're going to be getting increased power while wielding a one-handed weapon in your main hand. Main hand sword skills gain reduced recharge. Now we don't really care about the main hand sword skills, but we do care about gaining increased power while wielding a one-handed weapon in your main hand. And that kind of synergizes as well with the scepter trait up here. So you're going to be gaining might while wielding a scepter. You're going to be gaining extra power while wielding a scepter as well, since it's a one-handed weapon. And if you're using your symbols, you're going to be getting Symbolic Avengers. So there's 3 different ways that you're going to be getting more power. So that's why it's kind of important to be dropping your traps while you have your Scepter Focus out, or Scepter Torch out rather. Does that make sense? When you're dropping those traps, you want to get them out when you have your one-handed weapon out, being your Scepter. So just keep that in mind. Additionally, one nice thing to know is that your Virtue Skill 1 is renewed when you kill a foe. So if you're using your pull consistently and you get some kills, that's going to be renewed. It does have a 1-second ICD, but that's quite small. Retribution gives you extra strike damage when you have Resolution. That's a 10% damage increase. So if you're running Wrathful Spirit, you're going to get Resolution from that as well, which will synergize with this Retribution trait. Now, I know I said Renzella's Scepter if you have a Herald in your party, but you will also get Resolution from your Firebrand, assuming they're playing the class correctly. They should give you, not permanent uptime, but, a good amount. I think last time I checked, it's like maybe 30-40% Resolution uptime. Could be wrong. We'd have to look at the logs, but that is what I remember for Resolution. Additionally, one other thing to know is that if you are running Greatsword, we'll go back to the game right here. I'll just pop on my Greatsword, assuming I can find it, or if I didn't move it to a different class. I think I may have moved it to a different class here, so I might not have my Greatsword.
Just equipped your legendary one, duh.
Yeah, I don't have one, unfortunately, so unlucky. Yeah, so anyways, your Greatsword skill number 4, that symbol, I believe will also give Resolution, and we can take a look at it here, actually, if we just do a little weapon swap. Yeah, you're going to be getting Resolution from that. So, one little trick, when you're going into the enemy, and let's say we're in melee, or if we're running on top of them, you could drop that symbol down. So you do a Greatsword number 4, and then you get your Greatsword number 2 out. That Greatsword number 2 will benefit from that Resolution. It will basically guarantee that you have Resolution on you, assuming it doesn't get stripped or corrupted. So you'll get that damage increase. You also get a nice little Ferocity boost from Radiant Power here, and a critical chance increase of 10%. But yeah, and then also we run Righteous Instincts in this line, so Resolution increases your chances to critically strike and grants might each interval. So you're going to get some nice might gen here. You're going to get a 25% critical chance increase. So we can see from this we have 25%, from this we have 15%. So, this base critical chance is not necessarily as low as it might seem, just because of the nice little traits that you have here. So, yeah, so Resolution, very important to have. Hopefully your Firebrand gets it to you. And then if not, if you're running Wrathful Spirit, you get it from that. Any questions so far? Cool. So Dragon Hunter, we run Piercing Light. So your traps gain reduced recharge and they slow enemies. So your traps, your Procession of Blades. So if we'll take a look at it right here. It goes down to a 20-second cooldown. And then also your Test of Faith goes down to a 24-second cooldown. So I believe they changed the cooldowns of these in World vs. World, but we would have to check that. I just know that tooltip is inaccurate right now. So it's very important to be getting your traps down, say when the enemy is W keying us, or if we're being the aggressors and we have the upper hand in fights, you could kind of get in there and drop your traps on them to try and generate more downs. But you will get the reduced recharge on there, and they're pretty low in terms of cooldowns already. But you're also going to be applying slow to enemies too, and assuming it's not cleansed immediately, their skills and their actions are slower. So when they're pushing onto us, you will be helping the group out not only by doing damage, but also by forcing their skills and their actions to be slower. So that's why it's really important to get those traps underneath us on hard pushes. You don't really want to be wasting these and throwing them out all willy-nilly. There's a lot of value to be had from them just outside of the damage that they apply. And then you'll also notice that the traps, at least Test of Faith, also applies Cripple. So it's just really good for stopping power. These alongside Breach from the Scourge, which we talked about last week, very helpful in preventing, W keys from enemies. You also run Bulwark. Shield of Courage gains increased radius and duration. So Shield of Bulwark is actually going to be your F3 skill, or sorry, hold on. I'm sorry, Shield of Courage, yes, that's what it's called. Shield of Courage is your F3 skill. From this trait, you're going to get an increased radius and an increased duration. So if we look in game and we pop our F3, you're going to have a much larger radius and it's going to have a longer duration. The nice thing about this F3 skill is that it's not just a projectile block, but if you were to put, say, like a symbol on me or hit me with other damage, friend hit me, whoops. Anyways, if someone was going to hit you with symbol or AoE damage, it's going to block that too, as long as you're facing the direction in which it's coming from. Cool. Going back to the traits, you deal increased strike damage based on your distance to the enemy. So minimum bonus damage 5%, maximum bonus damage 15%. I believe that is as you get closer, you get more damage. I would have to look into that, but that's how I believe it works. And then also Hunter's Fortification. Remove conditions when blocking attacks. Receive less damage when you have no conditions on you. So this is just a nice little defensive trait here where, remove a condition when you block, and also you receive less damage when you have no conditions. So hopefully your scrappers are doing their job, because if they are, you will take 10% less damage. So those are the traits. We went over the gear real quick. We talked about the utilities. I guess what would be next would be talking about actual in-game play and your strategy when playing Dragon Hunter, assuming there's no questions about these skills that we have here.
I had a quick question about your F1, your Spear of Justice, because the trait reduces the cooldown, or deletes the cooldown basically if you killed someone, right?
Yeah.
But in my experience, it's only ever reset the Spear of Justice itself and not the pool. Is that right?
I have had my pull reset. You might have got hit by the ICD, but here, so I'm gonna get it on cooldown. Here, we're gonna pull you. Now we're gonna kill you.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then it recharged. So now I have it available to me again to use and pull somebody.
Can you demonstrate?
Oh, I mean,
You're saying the second part of the ability.
Yeah, the pull is the thing I don't think resets.
okay.
Maybe if you kill 2 people. Try that.
So I have a question
What's up?
as well. So the trait that gives you damage when you hit with your symbols, does that proc multiple times on your Scepter too, or only once per ability use?
I think it's per pulse, but we could try it. I'm
Okay.
definitely
If you
interested
Scepter
in-
2 me, can it proc 5 times or whatever?
Here, I'm Scepter 2. I'll wait for it to go away. I have 5 stacks.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, it's gone. There's 1, there's 2,
Okay,
there's
yes,
3,
it does.
there's 4. So it pulses. Yep, it pulse
You could
accrues.
just stack. Okay.
So, I mean, that's just
Is
the
that full
result.
uptime if you're hitting Scepter 2 on cooldown? Almost, I guess.
So Symbolic Avenger lasts, and we could take a look at that.
15?
For 15 seconds. Your Scepter 2 is, and I want to go by the World versus World
Okay.
cooldowns here, 10 seconds. So
Okay.
you could realistically, assuming there's no ICD, which there isn't, you could realistically have permanent uptime, assuming that you're hitting your symbols accurately. So yeah, I mean, that's a big part of Dragon Hunter. So a lot
I didn't
of...
even know that was a trait.
Yeah, a lot of how you do more damage than the other DHs just deals simply with getting your skills down on the biggest clump possible, right? making sure that you're getting the full value of your 5 target cap for your symbols, getting your traps down in a similar manner where you're hitting the maximum amount of enemies possible, which basically means if we're getting a W key in on us, or if we are hard pushing an enemy and we're able to get directly on top of them, you're getting your traps down and they're hitting maximum amount of people. And just the sheer amount of skills that you get out. So you want to be weapon swapping fairly frequently. As you can see, your symbols are on a very short cooldown. Your Torch 5 is on a 15-second cooldown. Your Staff 3 is on a 12-second cooldown. Your Staff 2 is on a 8-second cooldown. So you should be able to get out any skills very quickly. A lot of the DHs that I see do lesser damage are just not getting their skills out as quickly as the others. Like if you look at someone who's pretty good on this on the class, and you look at their logs, you'll see that they have like maybe 30 skills down in a certain period of time, whereas another DH only has 15 skills down in that period. And that's really the differentiator on top of skill placement as well, in terms of, you know, who's doing more damage at certain times. That doesn't mean that you're just out here, you know, using your skills, you know, at random, or like, okay, you know, I see a few people over here, but we're not really doing a coordinated spike on that area. I'm just going to drop a staff number 2 and then, you know, do a couple of thousand damage and then walk away type deal. It's just a matter of getting these skills down on our hits as quickly as possible, right? So like we're moving into an enemy, and let's say Primrose over here is the enemy. We're moving in. You want to be able to like combo basically your Staff 3, Staff 2, switch to your Scepter 2, Torch 5, that kind of stuff, and just basically down enemies that way. Does that kind of make sense in terms of like frequency and speed of getting skills down? I think so.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess we could talk about combos a little bit. I'm gonna move away and try and break combat here. Or actually, I guess we could go over like our weapon skills real quick and just what they do and like how they're used in certain situations. So we'll start with Staff. Your Staff 3 is going to be Symbol of Swiftness. Now on Firebrands, you know, we get these symbols down underneath us to provide us with swiftness before a fight potentially. I would rather our Dragon Hunters not do that. I would rather them save them. It is a combo field of light, so that means definitely don't get it underneath us when we're doing stealth gyros. But if you're not using these just for swiftness, then that's really not a problem. Holy Strike is going to be a damage spike skill. It's going to hit 5 targets, and it's also a blast finisher. It's also 1200 range, similar to Symbol of Swiftness. So basically your combo when you're in Staff is you're getting your symbol down on the meat of the enemy, preferably the head of the enemy, assuming we could hit 5 people with it. Yeah, Callie, so we mentioned before that we prefer to have everyone carry a staff and a greatsword, and then you basically adjust your weapon set based on the fight and how the fight's going. No, we don't really want to run longbow. So if we're running more ranged, like let's say we're fighting Roar, or we're fighting like the Caning stack, and the fights are tougher and we're not really able to go in for melee hits as quickly, then you would probably want to run Staff. It's going to give you more ranged versatility, you're going to have more impact at ranged, you're going to be able to provide damage before we're able to go into the enemy. Now, if we're fighting another group and we're able to really get some nice melee hits off on them, that's when you would swap out the Staff for Greatsword, because you know, your Greatsword 4 symbol and your Greatsword 2, there's going to be some nice synergies there, and that Greatsword 2 is a very powerful skill. It's going to do a lot of damage. And additionally, I guess you have the pull too, which you can kind of chain together with our bubbles or our well spikes and stuff like that. So it's situational stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's very simple in Staff. Your, you know, 900 to 1200 range spike, if we're doing those, it's going to be your Staff 3 and your symbol 2. I would recommend, if we're like hitting the tail or something like that, you probably don't want to waste your Staff 3, because they're just going to move out of it after 1, if not 0 pulses of it. So you really want to get a lot of value out of that symbol, because it does stay on the ground for, you know, a few seconds, and you do get some extra pulses out of it, and it will proc your Symbolic Avenger and give you more damage. Whereas number 2 could just be like a quick spike skill in a single target area, and then that's it. The rest of the skills on here, pretty simple. Your Bolt of Wrath is a 1200 ranged damage attack. You might be using that for like cannons, or, you know, any types of desieging that we do, but also it could be just like ranged haze pressure, because you will get an AoE effect on it from, what is it, the 3rd attack in the chain? We'll just toss the Staff. Where's the staff? I can't find it. Why am I dumb? There we go. The third attack in the chain hits 5 people. The second attack in the chain hits 3 people. So you're getting some AoE value out of it too. So you could just keep on stacking some damage over time using your staff. Number 1 auto attack, the second and the third in the chain. Empower, pretty simple. It's just going to give us might for each pulse. So this, alongside our firebrands using it, will give us extra might. And we should be going into engagements on the first hits, at least with, hopefully 25 stacks of might. Doesn't always work out like that because, sometimes it takes, more time to get that first hit, but ideally you get it from that. Lastly, your line of warding. There are a couple of situations where I see this viable. We went over this in Firebrand training the other day. If you were at a Firebrand training, it was more of an impromptu thing we did on Saturday, but this is going to be a nice 10 target CC, meaning that if any one of those 10 people who happen to run over it do not have stability, it will knock them back. Now, you don't really want to use it when the enemy is approaching us, because they are more than likely going to have stability up. You want to really combo this with, say, bubbles, so our Spellbreaker bubbles, or our well spikes, right? So if we're dropping a well bomb on the enemy, we're going to have that well of corruption going off. It's going to be getting some boons corrupted. Hopefully we get some stability corrupted. You drop your lines in and around that well bomb. People are going to be walking into it as they try and evade away, and we stop attacking each other. People are going to be trying to move out of it, and it's going to be a lot tougher if we have some lines in there, similar to the bubble too. The other scenario where you might use this is if we get a really nice hit off on the enemy and they're trying to retreat and regroup, you might throw it in the middle of them to kind of chop them up and catch a little bit of their tail. So just find those 2 opportunities: 1, after a big hit where the enemy's retreating, and 2, in our well or our bubbles, basically. So anytime we're getting a lot of boon rip and boon corruption. Does that kind of make sense? Cool.
Yep.
Yup.
Fantastic. Greatsword. I really don't know where my Greatsword went. I thought I maybe moved it to a different character, but now that I'm thinking about it, I don't really think I did, because I think it was exotic, so maybe I just salvaged it. Not ideal. I came unprepared. We'll talk about Scepter and Torch next. Scepter 2 is going to be your damage spike, your range damage spike on the Scepter weapon set. So you're going to want to get this down. It's going to be a 900 range attack, so it's going to be a little shorter than your staff skills. So that's why you probably want to start at staff, because you just get more value out of it at a longer range. But this one's nice because it's going to be giving you not only a nice little damage spike, but it's also going to be granting might to nearby allies and then vulnerability to enemies. So ideally, you're not really wasting this at 900 ranged. You would probably want to be using your staff 3 and your staff 2 for that. This one you want to use when we're going to be a little more closer to melee, ideally, just so that we can get the value of the might generation from it, and then yeah, it's just a little extra power to us. Now you could use it for a ranged attack. Nobody's going to get really too upset at you if you do that, but if you have the opportunity to drop it in melee, kind of prioritize this one getting directly underneath us, just to give us a little extra power. Outside of that, your other AoE attack is going to be your Torch 5. This one is actually really good. It's going to be something that you use a little more in melee range. It's only a 400 ranged attack, so if we're going in for that melee hit, maybe you got your traps down, you got your symbol 2 down, now you want to start getting your Torch 5 out. You'll see it's kind of like a cone in front of you in a way. You just basically breathe it on the enemy, and it's going to just, give you lots of numbers on the screen. Big damage. It's a really good skill to use. And then your Greatsword. I don't have a Greatsword on me, but...
You have one now. It's in your mouth.
Well, hey, thank you.
Now you can go.
Following me so I can break combat. Oh. Wait, I have 2 now.
Is that okay? Oh.
Yeah, that's fine. I can take it back. Let's see if I can break combat over here. I think I cannot. Just give me 2 seconds to exit the arena and equip this.
It's faster to exit, yeah.
Okay, I need to. Fantastic. Alright. Thank you for the Pearl Broadsword. I'm gonna go back on the blue team. Cool. So now we got the Greatsword. So the two skills that you really want to focus on, primarily obviously the Greatsword number 4, you get that down, it's going to stop you for a second so you can't really do it on the move, so just keep that in mind. It's going to apply vulnerability on the enemies, and it's going to give you resolution, which is going to give you that nice 10% power buff. So you want to get this down, and then once you get it down, you go into your Greatsword number 2 spin, and it's going to obviously give you really nice damage in direct melee range. So if you're cleaving on top of the enemy and we're kind of grinding through them, or maybe we're doing a push through and they don't really have a good bomb and we're able to move through them, and you don't really need to dodge. However, I would recommend you do dodge. You could use your Greatsword 2 through them. It's going to give you really nice damage. You also get some nice projectile damage from it too, although not as much. But yeah, another nice thing is that when you put your Greatsword symbol number 4 down and you spin, you're going to do cleansing bolts. So you'll also, just as a side effect, cleanse conditions from allies. Now that's not its primary or even its secondary, focus here, but it's just a nice side effect from it. Outside of that, the other skills you have, your Greatsword number 3, which is a leap. Kind of nice if you need to reposition. Just make sure you don't have an enemy targeted if you're trying to reposition away from the enemy. But then also your pull. So pull is kind of similar to how you would use your line. Use it when we're in a bubble, or use it on a well spike or a well bomb. Use it when we have an opportunity to really strip or corrupt stability off of our enemies. Because if you use it on an enemy that has stability, you're not going to get that pull on them. So really try and prioritize this when we are having an opportunity to pull enemies. So outside of that, you have your Greatsword number 1 cleave. It does some damage. It's not a ton, but it definitely does some. So I'm gonna go.
Does the second part of the Greatsword 2 count as a projectile?
Yeah, it's like those little things that shoot out. Those are projectiles.
Yeah. Okay, so those can get denied or blocked or whatever
Or
by or reflected or something.
yeah. So I'll actually put it back on.
You want me to? I'll put in a feedback in a second.
Yeah, if you want to put a feedback down, go ahead. But
I can
it
drop
says
it on there.
projectile, so I'm going to assume that's projectile that can be reflected. So
There you go.
cool. Drop it.
That's more filled.
Yep.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm taking damage.
Okay.
So those will get reflected back
nice.
to you.
Okay.
Good to know.
Thank you
Yeah.
for testing that.
Good to know. Yeah, I like doing these kinds of things because of these little niche details that I'm just not familiar with. We can kind of go over and learn together. So yeah, those are your weapon skills. We'll go over the utility skills real quick. You have your 2 traps. Obviously, we want to get max value out of those. You get those down on W keys basically from the enemy. If they're hard pushing us, you want to get those down. So also, I guess I started attacking you. Try not to get baited on these. A lot of groups, and the one that comes to mind immediately is Indo. He will push in and he'll stop about 300 range in front of you and just raid you from there and then move back. So you're not really going to get the value out of the trap. So kind of read the enemy group and try and understand how they're fighting. Like Roar yesterday, they were more so just hard pushing us. So that would be a group, a good group to, kind of trust that you can get your traps down on their pushes and kind of get them into us. Now, if you really want to be smart about it, you can just wait for the enemy to be within 100 range and just pushing on top of us basically, and then get them down. They're very quick to get down. So your Procession of Blades is what, a half a second cast time, and then your Test of Faith is going to be an instant cast, an auto cast. So you're going to get a lot of value out of these traps if you wait until basically the last second to get them down, because you're not going to get punished for waiting until the last second. You're more than likely going to get rewarded because you're getting them down at the right time. Another play that I like to do, and I wouldn't recommend it to you if you're just starting to learn Dragon Hunter and learning what your limits are, but sometimes I'll be greedy and I'll kind of leap into the enemy. I'll get my traps down and then I'll dodge back, or I can use my heal to get back or something like that. But that's only if I feel like being greedy, and it's only if I know that the enemy group is not really going to punish me as much. But on our spikes, I might leap in and just get those traps down just to kind of greed some extra damage and kind of proc some extra downs on our ranged hits. Obviously, you don't want to be doing it just on your own. You want to coordinate it with our range damage, but it's just something maybe to keep in mind. For now, I would recommend just using them as a W key denial and getting them down underneath us on those kinds of hits. Outside of that, you have your Sword of Justice. It's going to be a 900 ranged attack as well. This is one where you're going to drop on the ground and it takes a second for it to pop up and start doing damage. So really you want to use this in more so closer range. using it at 900 range, like the enemy's tail is going to get like no value out of it. Use it for bigger, ranged hits. Maybe like 400 to 600 range. We really get in there. We're hitting like the head of the enemy group, and we get these downs, in collaboration with our symbols. It's just another nicer ranged attack that also provides vulnerability and cripple. I'm going to try and get back into staff here again. Cool. So enter back in. So then I guess in terms of like combos and stuff, obviously we talked about the staff already. That's 1200 ranged. We'll say Svine over here is going to be the enemy. If we're doing a lot of like moving and movement, you might just want to drop your staff number 2 on him to get like that ranged burst. Your symbol, I would say leave that until you know that you're going to get, at least a couple of pulses out on the enemy. If they're moving really slowly, if they're kind of S-keying away, or they're just not being, really quick. Like I said before, like Indo's one I always go back to. He's going to be really fast, really agile, and he'll probably move out of our damage, so you have to really find like the sweet spot to get it down. But kind of save your symbols for when you can get like a pulse or 2 out of them. Use your staff number 2 for like an instant burst. Yeah, hit the head, not the tail, for sure. So we're going in for a ranged trade. We get the staff number 2 down. Maybe you could also get a staff number 3 down. Then you want to go into your Scepter and Torch, because after our range trades, ideally we're getting some downs on the enemy. We might go in to secure them. If we're moving in and we can still hit the meat of the group, that's when you want to get maybe your Scepter 2 down, start getting more Symbolic Avenger, get your Sword of Justice, and then if we get really close, get your Torch down, and get that cleave out with your Torch. You can also get another symbol down after that. But really, you have so much at your disposal. As long as you're getting these skills down really quickly, the order isn't terribly important outside of getting like the Symbolic Avenger from your symbol skills. So I might do a staff 3, staff 2, move in for my Scepter 2, get my Torch out, get a Sword of Justice down. You're really able to chain these skills together very quickly, and that's why I said the better DHs are more than likely just getting more skills out in a quicker period of time or a shorter period of time, and really landing those skills on the meat of the group. So yeah, those are kind of like your weapon skills and like your utility skills. What do you Torch for? Okay, so here's the thing. Torch 4 will hit 3 targets, and it will be... actually, I believe in World vs. World it's 1 target. Let me go ahead and check that out. If I swap here... No, I guess... Okay, so the burn from it will be 3 targets. However, the projectile you use at the end will be 1 target. And this is a very niche skill. So it will hit very high. I've hit like, 7 to 8k, maybe higher on it with a crit. But if we see an enemy standing out, let's say Svine over here is kind of standing out from the enemy group. He's, kind of in the tail. Maybe he got a mode. Maybe he got crippled. His scrapper didn't, cleanse him, didn't give him super speed. Whatever the case might be, and, he's kind of struggling back there. His health is getting lower. You can just double pop your number 4, and it's going to shoot a projectile at him, and it's going to, ideally, crit quite high. Another opportunity where I use this is, say, on... Let me get my recharge back here. I'm going to pull Callie here. So I'm going to pull her. I'm going to pull her in. I'm going to use my Emo for my number 3, and I'm going to double pop my number 4 to get a big crit on her. So in scenarios where we get a nice pull, I'm going to try and use my lockdown, my Emo. It's a longer Emo, but I don't think it's 5 seconds in World vs. World. It's actually 2 seconds, but 2 seconds in World vs. World is a millennium, because it's just going to be, you're sitting there like in the enemy group for 2 seconds, you're probably going to get ground down. So that's another nice combo to use, if you can pull it off, is use your F1 pull the enemy into us, get out your Scepter 3 to immobilize them, and then double pop your number 4 on them to get a nice big projectile attack on them. So that is when I would use those 2 skills, your Scepter 3 and then your Torch 4. Does that make sense?
Nice.
Yeah, it's very nice, especially if you get like a nice big pull on, say, like a support class or maybe a Glacier class, like a DH, who you can basically, lock in place and then just really punish with a
I
double
thought the
pop
first
themselves.
part of it just like did damage around me.
Yeah,
It's
it
burn.
pulses damage around you,
So is
and
is it
that
just not a
ends
lot
when
of
you
damage?
throw it.
Okay.
That-
It burns nearby foes.
Yeah, I've always done that when I'm like in the middle of everyone. But is that just not worth using? Like not worth the button press?
Yeah, so I mean, it applies burn, right? So like it's going to be
Okay.
3 seconds of burning nearby foes. And realistically, in an enemy group, they're gonna have good enough cleanse. So
Okay.
I like to use this as a projectile to try and like single target it down. Like I kind of treat it similarly if you're at the Scourge, training we did to Spinal Shivers, where it's like a single target, high damage skill, where you can kind of generate it down all on your own if you're hitting the right target. And it's just bonus points if you get like a pull and then an emob and then like a double tap of your number 4 to really just generate downs closer to us after you land a sweet pull. But I guess there's multiple areas or multiple times where you can use it. I swear I turned off my auto attack. Let me check here. 1 sec. Combat. Auto targeting. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird. But
I'm gonna practice on Beloka.
sure. And like I said, it's all about speed. So the quicker you get your skills off, the quicker you can pull like these kinds of combos off. So
Yeah.
yeah, just I guess finish off like the number 1 skill or the F1 skill rather. It's gonna be that spear. You're gonna hit at a target. You're gonna also be able to pull them in. The periodic burning application, not terribly important in my opinion. Burning is just gonna get cleansed. You do blind them, and you do also apply light aura, which gives you a 10% incoming damage decrease. However, we're more so just concerned about the pull. And you could at times pull multiple targets if multiple targets do not have stability. So just keep that in mind. It does pierce. After that, the Virtue Wings of Resolve, it regenerates health passively, but you're more so going to be using it as a leap to a target or a leap away, basically. It's also going to, cure Immobilize. So if we're the aggressors in fights, if we really have the opportunity to really aggressively get in there, we're going to use this F2 sometimes to maybe, kind of get those traps down on the enemy before our ranged hit or as our ranged hit gets in. More so, I would say if you're newer to Dragon Hunter, you're going to use this skill defensively. Let's say you get out of position or you get pulled or something doesn't go right and you need to get back to the tag. You can just use your number 2 to get back to us. You're going to get a nice little heal. You're going to cure a mob. And I believe it's going to cure 2 extra condies off of you. So use this as like a repositioning skill while you're still starting out.
Yes.
What's up? Go ahead.
One thing though is that like you can still be like lined or like
If you don't have stability, you can still be lined. You can still get interrupted.
yeah.
It is not foolproof, but it's one of the better tools you have outside of your heal skill, which gives you a recharge here, or rather an invuln, and then also like an extra 4.5 to 5k health. Lastly, the F3.
Invuln, is it?
Your heal is an invuln, yes.
Your heal skill?
Your heal skill is an invuln. Yep, you block attacks.
Yeah, you
only
block
in
attacks.
1.25 seconds, or sorry, 2 seconds
Okay.
block duration. Sorry.
Okay.
But anyways, your F3 is going to grant Aegis periodically, and as we talked about, that will synergize with your Wrathful Spirit here, so you're going to be granted boons when it ends. Remember, we're only going to be really running this if you don't have your Herald in your party. You're going to get that Aegis, so you're going to get some blocks, whenever this procs, basically, which is 40 seconds. But you're also going to, more importantly, be blocking attacks from the direction that you are getting attacked from. So, Rhea, I'm going to pop this, and you want to throw a symbol on me real quick? So I'm popping this, go ahead and throw a symbol on me. I'm blocking that attack. So it's not only projectiles, it is also ground-targeted damage. So let's say the enemy
put
is...
trap down.
Yeah. The enemy is moving into us, and we're kind of counter-firing, or, returning fire onto them. That is a nice block that you can get out, where you know that you're going to be safe for the duration of that block. And you will be allowed to get out damage onto the enemy group without really taking much damage. Now, you're going to be getting damage from like the sides and the backs, right? It's only the direction that you're facing. But you are able to greed a little more and get out more skills when you have this up. So if I'm really trying to win a trade, or if I'm playing DH and I'm really trying to win an engagement, when we move in and I know we're going to be taking a lot of damage, I might proc this F3 so that I can get down, my symbol combos, get down my Sword of Justice, get my traps down on the group, and then kind of, roll backwards while still having that shield up. So it's very helpful to have up when you are trying to get out as much damage as possible. Just know that if you about face or if you turn away, any damage that's hitting your back while you have that shield up will still hit you. So it's a good S key skill. So if we're kind of backing away and just like throwing damage forward, or it's a good aggressive skill, like we're going in on the enemy and you're trying to really get as much damage down as possible on them. So use that there. Now, we really haven't talked about your heal too much, although I guess we kind of just did. It's basically just a block. If you need an invuln and you're lower health, go ahead and pop this and you can kind of get back to the group. So what I might do is I might chain my heal, my F2, and then also my renewed focus together. The one thing to keep in mind about your renewed focus is that it's also going to recharge your F1, your F2, and your F3 skill. So ideally you're prioritizing your heal invuln before you go into your elite invuln if you have not used your F1, your F2, and your F3 already. So there's a lot of nice stuff you can do with this. Let's say you get really far off tag, you can kind of pop your leap, your elite invuln, and then another leap, and you're basically, 2,000, 2,500 units away from the enemy at this point, and you're pretty well saved. There's a lot of forgiveness in the DH build. You have basically 2 leaps, assuming you use your renewed focus. You have 2 AoE blocks, assuming you use your renewed focus. And then you have, 2 invulns, basically, 1 from your heal and 1 from your elite. So while DH is running more damage-oriented gear, and while it does have a much lower health pool than the other classes, you really do have a lot of survivability baked into this class, just from the different virtue skills and then your different, your heal and your elite. So, yeah, so as Mierzu said, and as I covered, try and use your F2 and F3 before renewed focus. It's really helpful to have, 2 sets of these skills available to you, because that renewed focus will recharge them. Any questions on that?
2 questions. Number 1, the F1, when somebody hits you with it initially, and you get pulled, can you dodge between the time that you get hit and the time they actually pull it, or once you get hit, you're done?
So once you get hit with the spear, in between the time that you get hit and the time they pull, you could try and big brain it and try and dodge, if you think they're gonna proc their pull on you, and that will basically prevent you from being pulled. So the 2 ways to avoid it is if you see you're chained, hopefully you have stability, or you kind of dodge the pull, but that requires just a little bit of luck on your end to evade that pull.
Or you have to see it and it's dodge quick enough because it's, easy to double tap a key, right? It's just right, it's just a matter of good timing, right?
In terms of evading the pull, yeah, it requires some luck.
The other thing I had is, under renewed focus, I don't understand what the second bullet item says. It says prevents capture point contribution.
Yeah, so
What
let's say,
does that mean?
Yeah, let's say we're at a camp and you're trying to capture the camp, and you pop this, you will no longer cause that camp capture to continue to tick in your favor. Also, another thing is if you're defending and you're running into the ring and you're trying to hold out for us and you pop that, the enemy will still be able to capture while you're in that invuln state, right? So the enemy's trying to capture Bay, for example, and you're the only one there, and we're at the portal, we're not in there yet, and you jump into the ring. If you pop your renewed focus, that enemy will still be able to capture that ring while you're charging that renewed focus and getting those that block out, basically. So yeah, you won't be taking damage, but you won't really be contributing to the stalling of the ring capture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I just didn't know what it meant. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Like I said, DH is a very simple class. The main differentiators with it is speed of skills, your location and positioning of skills, and really, kind of making use of your invulns and your blocks to get out more skills while we're melee trading. Traps are huge. Traps are, really nice spike damage. You walk over a test of faith and you don't have protection up and you're a squishier, class, you're getting hit for 6 or 7k. It's gonna hurt. So you really want to try and maximize that. I guess one last thing I'll say about traps is a lot of people will say, I don't know, drop them at an entrance of a choke, a bridge, right? It's you drop them at one side of the bridge and you're just okay, enemy, come on down. I just dropped my traps here. Please go hit them. I feel that's really kind of a waste. There's no guarantee that the enemy will proc these. There's no guarantee that it'll just be a druid's pet that walks over these and just procs them. You get 0 value out of them. So don't try and preload your traps. Like I said, They have a half second to no second cast time. Use them when you're going to get value of them. Don't try and big brain it. You know, the biggest mistake that people make with their traps is the big braining of them. You know, you don't have a bigger brain than the enemy. Sorry, just use them when you're gonna get, you know, the most value out of them. So I can't emphasize that enough. Only time I'll drop them preemptively will be to show stealth approaches. I guess that makes sense. I just wouldn't want all my DHs doing it. I guess there are times where we're in SMC Lord's Room and, you know, we know, like, Roar might be pushing from, like, the northwest tunnel. If one DH drops their traps there, I will try and make use of them if I, you know, see them proc and the enemy's pushing in. So, you know, ideally you'll get some value out of them. But all the other DHs, if you see one DH, drop them up there. Don't drop yours too. What else? When we are breaking gates, it's good to pre-drop your traps. Sure, there's a 20-second cooldown on them. If we're breaking down a gate and you want to put them on the portal, you know, maybe the enemy's, you know, further inside and you know you're going to get your second set of traps up basically when the enemy might engage us, that's fine too. I'm mainly talking open field when I say don't pre-drop your traps. Like when we're squaring up, keep on going back to Roar because we fight them a lot, but if we're squared up with Roar and like they're over on Spine over here and we're over here, don't just drop them under your feet because there's minimal chance that they'll hit them in an effective manner. Yes, don't run around throwing them like confetti for sure. Yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, I mean, this is not going to be nearly as in depth as Scourge. There's a lot more complexity to Scourge in terms of like how they play, so I kind of figured this would be a shorter like session. But yeah, it's a very fun class. It's definitely a more selfish damage class. We don't need a ton of them. You know, 3 or 4 when we're running big is pretty much adequate. But yeah, I think that's it. Anyone else have any other questions?
Good. Thanks for the guide. And of course, there's the guide on the meta channel to reinforce this and go back and reread again. You know, because
Yeah.
it'll be a test later, and you're not going to absorb all this, obviously, right?
For sure, yeah. So I do have in the Meta Builds channel a quick tips guide that goes over like more of the important tips that I have in here. Just in case you forget the more important ones. Obviously, we're not going to go over the traits in the quick tip guide and all other tiny things, but the more important stuff will be in there. Spirit weapons gain additional casts, improve, count recharge, and burn foes with their first strike. I would be willing to test that. I still feel like Symbolic Avenger is going to give you more value because the Eternal Armory is just going to give you a buff to Spirit Weapons, which you only have the Sword of Justice here. The Symbolic Avenger is going to affect every single one of your attacks. So I still feel like Symbolic Avenger might be the better play here, but I would be happy to test this with you.
Also, like, yeah, it gives the like burn condition, but I think someone mentioned earlier that if burn gets converted into a boon, it becomes Aegis.
Yes. Yeah,
That
so
might be rough.
Purity of Purpose is a Scrapper elite trait,
Yeah.
or Grandmaster trait, whatever, that converts conditions on allies into boons. And Burn, if you're applying a lot of Burn, is going to convert into Aegis, so you're basically giving away free blocks to the enemy. So I would prefer not to be giving out free Aegis out to the enemies. That would be less than ideal if we're just giving them free blocks. So if there's a trait that we'd be running over Symbolic Avenger, I'd prefer it doesn't give burn. But I'd be hesitant to agree that it gives more damage output, just because, like I said, Symbolic Avenger is going to affect literally everything you have. It's going to affect your torches, it's going to affect your traps, it's going to affect all of your symbols, it's going to affect your auto attacks. It's going to be very valuable. So I would need to see some pretty concrete testing to opt for Eternal Armory over Symbolic Avenger.
Also,
What's up?
valuable lesson just now. If you're dying of conditions and you use your leap, you're gonna die mid-leap.
Potentially.
Yeah.
You can die mid-leap. I've done it a million times. Like, I've leapt into some damage or over some damage, and it just hits you, and it's like, crap, I'm dead now. Fantastic.
Yeah, like,
So
don't
use it-
depend on it if you're like...
It's a really good reposition. It's not always going to, like, save you, necessarily. Anything else that I, like, missed? Or any other questions? I feel like that's probably good. Good. So now you guys are going to be super elite dragon hunters. You're going to be doing so much damage. You're going to be carrying us in DPS. I have faith in you guys. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.